Kia ora and welcome to the HRPI, where we investigate the tough employment issues so you don't have to. I'm your host, Marie Tovio, an employment relations expert and registered private investigator here in New Zealand. If you're a manager, business owner or HR practitioner wanting practical tips that help to keep you compliant and confident, you're in the right place. Today's case, the disappearing employee. We're talking about unexplained absence, abandonment of employment, what the law requires, and how to avoid landing yourself in hot water. Let's set the scene. You have an employee who doesn't show up to work on Monday morning. You check your emails and messages, nothing. Tuesday comes around and still no word. You try calling them, no answer. You're left wondering, are they okay? Have they quit? Is this abandonment? Can I end their employment? These situations are more common than you might think. And while they're frustrating, it's important to approach them the right way. Not every unexplained absence is abandonment, and if you jump to conclusions too quickly, you might find yourself on the wrong end of a personal grievance. First, let's clarify what abandonment of employment actually is, and what it isn't. In New Zealand, it's not specifically defined in the Employment Relations Act, but case law gives us some guidance. Generally, abandonment is when an employee is absent from work where you don't know the reason and they haven't contacted you. And importantly, they show no intention of returning to work. So where you know your employee's likely reason for being away, such as where they had previously been on sick leave, yet they haven't returned after the expiry of the medical certificate they gave you, it might not be abandonment. Does the employee's employment agreement include the necessary clause that defines abandonment and the potential consequences if it occurs? Even when your agreements do include this clause, you still need to follow a fair process when you think abandonment might have occurred before taking any action that could impact your employee's ongoing employment. Now let's talk about what fair process looks like. If an employee doesn't turn up for work and hasn't been in touch, your first step should always be to try and contact them. Call their cell phone, send a text, and email them. If you have an emergency contact on file, it might be appropriate to call that person, especially if you're concerned for their well-being. If you still haven't heard anything after a couple of days, it's time to send a formal letter. And to help ensure that they've got it, use other methods of communication to advise them that you've sent a letter and the physical address or email address that it's been sent to. You might send it by courier. This letter should outline the dates that the employee has been absent from work, that they haven't contacted you, and that you're concerned. Ask them to get in touch with you urgently. Give them a specific time frame to respond, such as a few days, and make it clear that if they don't respond, you may consider their employment as having been abandoned. Reference the abandonment clause in their employment agreement. It's essential that you give them a reasonable opportunity to respond once they're likely to have received the letter. That means not just sending a letter by email and calling it a day. You should be able to demonstrate that you made a genuine effort to reach them and that you gave them a fair chance to explain. If the deadline passes and there's still no word, you may then consider the employment relationship to be at an end. You would write to the employee again, summarising the situation to date, confirming that you're now treating their absence as abandonment, and explain what actions you took to try to contact them. You can note when their final pay will be processed and other things, such as about any work items the employee may need to drop back. Let's talk about some common traps. One of the biggest mistakes I see is employers assuming too quickly that an employee has abandoned their employment and then not following the correct process before ending the employee's employment. Sometimes people disappear for reasons you don't expect. Mental health issues, sudden family crisis, or even being hospitalised without being able to notify anyone. If they later come back and say they had a genuine reason and you didn't follow a fair process, they could claim unjustified dismissal. So how do you protect yourself as an employer? It starts with good documentation. Do you have a handbook or policy that your employees are aware of that details your expectations when an employee needs to take time off work? Is it clear about who they should notify, the acceptable methods, such as calling rather than just sending a text, and when they need to update you? Are your leave procedures clear? And make sure you keep yourself a note of every step you take, from when the first missed shift occurred to the phone calls, texts, emails, and letters you send. If you end up needing to justify your decision later, this evidence will be crucial. In terms of the clause that you need in your employment agreements, it will be something like, where an employee has been absent from work for 3 or more consecutive working days without authorization or good cause, and the employer has made reasonable efforts to contact the employee without success, the employer may consider the employee to have terminated their employment without notice by reason of abandonment. This sets clear expectations right from the beginning. And for anyone wondering about the cases where you think you actually do know why the employee is away, but you're still frustrated and think it's unacceptable that they haven't notified you or returned to work as expected, while it might not be abandonment, other processes might still be appropriate to address those situations, maybe even a disciplinary process. However, you would still want to do some preliminary inquiry with the employee instead of just launching into a disciplinary investigation. So, what are the key takeaways from today's episode? Firstly, don't assume abandonment without doing your due diligence. Try multiple methods of contact and keep a note of every step you take. Secondly, always follow a fair and reasonable process. Give the employee a chance to explain and respond before you take any action. Thirdly, make sure your employment agreements include a suitable abandonment clause and your policies reflect it. And finally, one further tip. Build a culture where employees feel safe to reach out if they're facing personal challenges. That openness can make all the difference. The information in this podcast is provided as a general overview of key employment topics and does not replace tailored advice. Every situation is different and the appropriate steps can vary depending on the specific circumstances. If you're unsure about how to proceed in your workplace, I encourage you to seek advice and support. Feel free to get in touch with me directly. That wraps up today's case file. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to the HRPI for more practical, procedurally sound tips for managing your people well. I'm Marie Tovio, and I'll be back soon with another workplace mystery solved. Until then, stay fair, stay curious, and stay compliant. Mā te wā.